cuarto no funciona, entonces vaya a la transmisión en vivo y podrá ver las traducciones ahí si necesitas. Gracias. I'm going to let the presenters introduce themselves. They are all very brilliant and experienced in their fields. And first, we're going to have Jeanne Flavin. Come on up.
Here's all the I'll start talking anyway. Okay. So, welcome. So, welcome. I am Jeanne Flavin, and it's very good to be in Bogotá. I will not attempt this in Spanish. Lo siento porque mi español está muy peor. So, hello. I grew up in Kansas, in the middle of the United States, in a very small farm. And so it's really odd for me to be here and to see some of these, hear some of these discussions and see some of these displays and feel a sense of connection that I haven't felt in my entire life when I've gone to conferences in the United States. So I just want to thank those of you who are putting the issues of land and the relationship to health and history. And I want to move this along, but I also want to know that one of the earlier speakers, also, I'm really sorry we don't have translation available. I'm sorry about that. But one of the earlier speakers spoke of the importance of revisiting our history, particularly those of us who've, I've learned that it wasn't just that my family were homesteaders, it was a form of settler colonialism. So that was a complicating factor. And I realized that that's actually been my whole career, my whole life, is now relearning what I thought I knew about something. What else did I think I knew? What other history was I not aware of? What other implications? And so that's really going to be part of what my remarks here today are about. So I grew up on a farm. I'm now a sociologist in New York City. I moved to New York in 1995, 30 years ago, half a lifetime, with my PhD in sociology and justice. And my life and my career was shaped by the first friends that I made there, champions of harm reduction and champions of reproductive justice. Among other things, harm reduction helped me, someone who mainly teaches criminal justice courses, imagine a world where it's possible to keep one another safe without relying on policing, surveillance, and the threat of punishment. And as mentioned, my entire career has been some form or another of unlearning, something I already knew or thought I knew, and harm reduction has been a big part of that. And so even now I'm wired for hope, or at least for promise, despite the direct attacks on sociological and scientific thought. And I'm going to begin by just briefly talking about the ideology that is really common in the United States, the individualistic cult of the individual that defines and underpins the United States response to social problems. And instead, and I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the consequences this has for women, but I intend to spend most of my time piloting the idea of another frame that I thought, or another metaphor that we might use to kind of counter this current fixation on women's bodies and wombs. And it's a concept I'm calling the societal womb. Oh, that was just more proof. Okay, so since the 1980s in the United States, since many of you know this history, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it because I don't like to repeat things that were wrong and shouldn't have been said to begin with. Since the 1980s in the United States, sensationalized false narratives like the crack baby hysteria have painted poor women and black women as threats to society. These controlling images fueled a campaign of policing and punishment and organized social abandonment and neoliberalism. Now, pregnancy happens inside a person's body, and many factors may or may not affect a fetus. But the drug war propaganda capitalized on this United States ideology, this emphasis on individualism. It also capitalized on capitalism, to use women's use of drugs to actively distort the American public's understanding of what actually shapes maternal and child health in the United States. And they did so with devastating effect. And I think we're going to hear from people on this panel who will speak to some of the ways, not only in the United States, but elsewhere, this is. Okay. So, for example, researchers at Pregnancy Justice, which was founded by Lynn Paltrow in 2001, have documented nearly 1,800 arrests of pregnant people, overwhelmingly women, whose pregnancies were treated as part of a crime. Typically, the only evidence is a single positive drug test. In most of these cases, there was no proof of harm. Just the possibility of harm was enough to bring charges of crimes like child endangerment. Now, it's not only the direct consequences that disturb me, and again, I think Lynn's going to speak to some of these, but these arrests and the media coverage that accompanied them and often parroted, just echoed what the prosecutor said. And this is something I think we often overlook. Every time we're focusing on these arrests and these prosecutions and we see the media coverage, it entrenches dangerous myths about health, drug use, and reproduction. And these are some myths that we might even ourselves sometimes be susceptible to. And the point I want to make here is that these arrests contribute to a dangerous narrative that the state can and will hold women uniquely and criminally culpable for something that is biologically impossible, to guarantee that every pregnancy results in a healthy baby. That is a biological impossibility. And we are arresting and prosecuting women who, and again, we can speak to this, the most common outcome in these arrests was a healthy baby. But still, it should be chilling to us that women are being expected. Babies are not, okay, wait a minute. Today in the United States, right-wing politicians and lawmakers continue to prioritize policing of people's bodies and the use of state-sanctioned violence to keep people safe, while they ignore real, actual threats to the health and lives of the people we expect to reproduce. Threats like incarceration, bombing, and even pregnancy itself at times. And this is where I want to introduce the societal womb. Babies are not just the product of individual wombs. Babies are the product of a societal womb, the environments where their parents grow up, live, work, breathe. And the major drivers of health are social, not individual. Housing, environmental racism, lack of access to dignified care. These shape health outcomes for people far more than personal issues. So this applies when people use drugs, and this applies to pregnancy too. In fact, during pregnancy, the most common direct causes of injury and death are medical, not moral. Excessive blood loss, infection, high blood pressure. In fact, many health threats to a pregnancy, again, as many of us hopefully know, but many of us may not or haven't thought about it. Many threats to a pregnancy like heart disease, a weakened heart muscle, diabetes, but also partner violence, mental health conditions like despair, problem drug use, those typically pose an actual risk of worsening they typically existed before the person became pregnant, and there's a good risk that they will continue and possibly even worsen. Now, the good news is most of these, some estimates say like 84%, I mean, let's put a number, most of these conditions, most of the things that cause harm and death to women, maternal death and injury, are preventable with timely, compassionate, skilled care. So improving conditions in the societal womb for all women, especially those who are pregnant and parenting, will do far more to support the public health than any amount of drug testing and policing after someone becomes pregnant. We will not punish our way there, and I'm thinking we won't necessarily publish our way there either. But maybe. So one antidote in my remaining time to the cult of the individual that lets governments off the hook for providing the social supports. One antidote is to invest in the people, in the power, and that people build together. The power between people, communities, and institutions. And I'm running out of time, but I think it's just as well because we're going to have illustrations of this. They can speak to it far better than I. But I just want to make a couple kind of smaller points. And that is, Lynn Paltrow's work, a lot of it was done, you could look at it superficially as like advocacy on the part of an individual woman. And it absolutely was. And Lynn and the attorneys and workers at National Advocates for Pregnant Women and Pregnancy Justice really did some heroic work. But they also organized. They did community raising. They worked with communities. They worked with local people to have a sense of what was going on. This is never just a matter of individual advocacy. And similarly, and I think I skipped, there's one that's not here. And similarly, Joelle and the folks who have developed the Academy of Perinatal Harm Reduction, they're not just intervening at the point where somebody's in the hospital being drug tested, possibly without their specific informed consent, maybe with it, whatever. But not only being a nurse to that individual patient, but also working with other people, including people directly impacted who've experienced these things, to say, hey, how can we prevent this from ever happening again? So that's kind of the note I want to lead you on, is that the power of the people, including the power of non-cooperation and civil resistance, is going to be really important in terms of what I plan to bring to my students and the work going forward. So I'm going to call on us to weed out the toxic cult of individualism and let's seed positive change through people power and considering the concept of what's going on in our societal womb. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jeanne. I'll call NOMBULELO up to the stage next. And para ellos que vienen un poquito tarde, la traducción en este cuarto no funciona. Vaya a la transmisión en vivo en app y podrá ver las traducciones ahí. Gracias.
Thank you. Sure. Sometimes when brilliant people have spoken, you don't know what to say. I feel like saying, let's go home. My name is NOMBULELO. I am from Johannesburg, South Africa. I work as an advocacy officer, but I always call myself an activist. So I'm representing women who are not here. I wish they were here to speak for themselves. However, I've sat down and said, what do you want me to write? And they said, please do this and write this. So, okay, I thought I was technologically challenged. So I've narrowed this into one small area that we work in. So we work in different areas. We work in the whole of a district called Egurleni back in SA. So this place where we had these different cases of women, this is a place called Boksburg. So when we looked at Boksburg, actually there's an estimation of plus minus 420,000 people, and it's located in the east of Johannesburg, and it's mostly dominated by middle and upper classes. So when I say dominated, it means that some of the people think that because you're using drugs, they have every right to tell you how to live your life. So that's what we're seeing. And so in this area, women who inject drugs are often described in terms of their risk for HIV, viral hepatitis, and other sexual transmitted infections, with scant emphasis on their human rights and dignity. And in this area, what we're seeing some of the people being treated very unfairly and really, really discriminated against simply because they are mothers. And when you are a woman who uses drugs, you are often told that how can you make such stupid mistakes or decisions? I hope I'm not going to cry today. Every time when I present this work, I always cry. So the method that we've used in our programs, we have conducted parental groups, which includes males and gender diverse people. We felt it is important to also include males so that we can actually hear their views and hear what they also go through in terms of parental skills. And because remember that some of the males are parents, and some of them, they were chased away from their homes due to drug use, and they were discriminated against, so they can't also see their children. So here we included them. We wanted them to voice out their opinions and share their feelings. And then we have also conducted female contemplated groups for women who use drugs. This is where we involve social workers, where they run these groups and they talk about women experiences and they share their stories. And we also used the outreach peer-led model specifically for data collection. This is where we looked at, what is it that we can use, that we can gather in this community so that we can share experiences, we can share thoughts, we can share knowledge, and we can share with broader communities. And this also included one-on-one interventions. Sorry, guys. I've left you somewhere. I don't know what I've done. Okay. And this also included one-on-one interventions where we had one-on-one counseling sessions with women who use drugs so that we can, sometimes when you have to be put in a group or when you are put in a group, you can't actually share your feelings because you don't want to be discriminated against or you don't want to be judged by your peers. So you'd rather share in a very confidential platform. So the harsh realities that we find on the ground is that women who use drugs face severe systematic barriers. And 30% of these females that we have worked with, their kids have been taken away by the Department of Social Development in our country, which is really, really sad. And these acts of violence discriminate harshly against women, and some of them, were left broken, humiliated, and declared unfit. They were declared to be unfit mothers by the court of law, which is a really, really cold and harsh reality. When suddenly someone just says to you, I'm coming to confiscate your child because I always see you that you are always drunk, you can't even take care of your child is always, your child doesn't go to school, you don't feed your child is always dirty, and someone else decides for you. So these are some of the cases that we find on the ground. And some of their children are taken for foster care programs, and they are not taken because these women are volunteering to say, take my child to foster care programs. They are forced into foster care programs. And some of them go through adoption by the Department of Justice. They just, the Court of Law just decides that your child is going to be adopted by someone else. You don't know who this person is, you've never met them before, and you are just told. And some of the women have been coerced to go for rehabilitation programs. We're finding women who are forced they are actually told through orders that you are going to go for rehabilitation center, whether you like it or not. And some have been barred from interacting or seeing their children. What we're finding is that some of their children were taken to foster care homes. The court have told, the foster care parents or the homes that this woman must never, ever be led to be allowed access into the foster care places unless she goes for rehabilitation. So this is a story of a 29-year-old mother of 5. Her name is Jeanne. This is not her actual real name. So what had happened to her, they have taken her children, she has 5 kids, and her 2 last kids were taken away. And the younger one, the youngest, there was a social worker who just came in, and this lady just said, you know, legally, the private social workers are not supposed to remove children. However, here, she was a private social worker who came into the home and just said, I'm removing your child. You need to appear in court, you know, in 2 weeks' time. And, you know, she said she looked at the letter, it had no stamp, and it had no date. There's no office address. But she couldn't fight because she was scared that what if I fight and I get arrested? Would I be able to survive in jail? And she said, you know, looking at my child being taken away at 2 years, it really broke me into pieces, and not knowing if this child I'll find her alive or this child I'm going to find her dead. In 2 weeks' time, so she contacted our program, and we managed to look at the letter and try to find, you know, the letterheads and stuff like that. So we went back to the court just to find out if there is really a case that this woman, you know, has to appear for. And unfortunately, we found out that, yes, there is a case. However, they did not follow the right processes and the right procedures. So by the time we get to court and by the time we fought, we found out that the actual presiding magistrate is friends with the lawyer of the person who has to adopt the child. So these are some of the cases that we had to deal with. And unfortunately, you know, by the time we came in, already this magistrate had given an order for this child to be removed. However, now it is up to us as a program on how do we then intervene. So some of the things that we have done with Jane's case, sorry, I keep on forgetting you guys. So some of the things that we have done with Jane's case, you know, we went back to speak to the magistrate, and the magistrate just told us that the only thing that I'm going to do is to listen to you if this woman comes to the court clean and if she comes to the court sober. And we said, but what evidence do you have that whenever she appears, she's not sober? And what do you mean if you're saying you want this woman to be clean? Are you saying that because she uses drugs, she's not clean? Is that what you mean? Is there a certain law that says you can only assist a woman if she takes a bath and if she goes for rehabilitation? And the magistrate says, there is no law that says that, but I will be the first magistrate to do that. They say I'm left with 2 minutes. So then some of the things that we have done with some of these cases, including Jane's case, we worked with the paralegal attorney just to, you know, render us legal literacy group for women so that we can empower them. And we took Jane through psychosocial support, especially during when her child was confiscated, was taken away from her. And we also assisted with court prep because we had now to go look for representation for Jane. We had to go look for pro bono attorneys that can be able to assist Jane. And we had now to go back to DSD and say, DSD, you are going to give us the file, so that we can see on which merits and on which grounds have you taken this child away. And if you're saying the private social worker has removed the child, it means some of the legal forms were not submitted. So we required to see the file. And it was a bit of a hassle. However, we ended up advocating and saying, we are not leaving your office without this file. And she gave it to us. And we went back to court, and you know, the legal pro bono lawyer requested, bring me the court file as well. Surprisingly, when we got to the court, you know, when the court clerk tells you that we don't have paper to print the file. So we had to make sure that we provide means for paper to be available so that they can actually give us the file. And I'm happy to say Jane, her child was given back to her. And, and we are still working with her in our program, because what she wants now, she wanted us to take her into a shelter due to fear of, her other kids being removed. And unfortunately, where we come from, there are no shelters that give women who use drugs opportunities to stay there due to discriminations and the legalities that they create around the courts and stuff like that. I have a few more slides, but I'll leave it there. No, thank you so much, then.
Thank you so much. I'll just move us right along so we have plenty of time for questions at the end. Anna, you're up next. Sure. No, you can sit if you want.
Right, so hi, my name's Anna. This is going to be rough and ready, just like what I provide on the ground for mothers who use drugs. So who am I? I'm a mother, I'm a user, I'm a criminal, and really that's all that matters. Do you know what I mean? It's really that's all that matters. So who are they? They are mothers who love their children desperately, and that's why they remain hidden. You know, if you don't love your children and want to keep your children, you don't fight to hide from services that are going to take them away from you. And unfortunately, because you have to hide from any help that you might want to access. It's almost like a catch-22. Can't come forward for help, because the minute you come forward for help, they might kidnap your kids. So they're blamed, they're ignored, they're punished. But also they're exploited in the using community, exploited terribly by men, because they are paying for harm reduction equipment with money, with drugs, with sex, with letting men stay in their home. And it does happen all of the time, because they can't go into chemists. They can't be seen going into their local chemist and asking for harm reduction equipment. So how did it start? Look, it's a total fluke. I'm not going to pretend I'm clever and it was plotted out or anything like that. It was a total fluke. I went to the chemist one day, came out, saw a mother with a buggy, asked her what she was doing, and she said she was paying a guy to get her some needles. And I was shocked, but I was shocked that I drank the Kool-Aid. That's what I was shocked about. I was shocked that I'd believed harm reduction was for everyone, and I'd just accepted it. I hadn't questioned it. I just accepted it that it was, and I was shocked that I had thought I was their peer. No, I really had. This is when I thought lived experience was everything. And lived experience is powerful. But we forget that we become the other. And it's about when we become the other that they see us as the other. You know, we can call ourselves their peers, but it's about how they see us. So I was devastated that I deluded myself. But I thought, right, Anna, go and sort it out. What is going on? What's happening in the area? What is this really about? So I started with 1, then ended it with 2, then maxed up to 10. And never have a space open for very long. So once, I'm a bridge builder, so I'm not a support worker. I'm not there to solve their problems. I'm there to provide fucking equipment and to try and empower them a bit to say you have a right to be a mother, because they're so ashamed. They're so, the whole world is conditioned to believe that mothers who use drugs are bad. So how can anybody think otherwise? They hate themselves. We hate them. The using community hates them. Society hates them. I don't hate them. I love them. But more than that, I love their children. And this is something that I think we forget all of the time, is that they are harm reduction children. They are collectively harm reduction children. And I can understand why the fucking enemy wants to take them, because it weakens her. we can sort of for the next generation for social justice to embed it and make sure that we're stronger. It weakens us because we're one slow walk into death because we haven't got our children anymore. I can understand why organisations do it because it's all about the paper, it's all about the money now, it's all about the funding. But I fucking cannot understand at all why harm reduction allows it. We just have stood fucking back for the last 10 years and done nothing while thousands of fucking children have been taken. And it is time to fucking make sure it stops. Like, if you really are a fucking harm reductionist this time. Sorry, but I'm not here to fucking make friendship bracelets. I'm here for war. Do you know what I mean? Look at that. So, I came back into the public scene in like 2023, and it was like, look, let's fucking take this shit down. Let's start dismantling it. Let's not fucking hold any prisoners. And can I give a big thank you to Andrew Preston at Exchange Supplies, because he really took a chance on these mothers. He gave them a voice, he gave them a choice, and he gave them a chance, because they said, we don't like the sharp spins, we don't ever use them, we don't give you returns, Anna, because they're big, they're ugly, they're black. Do you know what I mean? So Andrew said, okay, then I'll order some in some colours so that you can put it in your kitchen cupboard and it won't look fucking out of place. And so they flew out, haven't they? They flew out. And this is what I mean about, I don't want to fucking hear, I don't even know, I don't want to hear from somebody who was fucking injecting 15 years ago about the sharp spins now. And we have prioritised that lived experience. Like, it has a powerful place in its lane. But living experience is where it's at. We need to have that fucking inner voice all the time. And all I am is a bridge builder. That's all I am. Because I think that's what we're missing. We're bridge builders. We're expecting bigger, yeah. And it's like, if they trust me, then if I pass them to somebody that I trust, do you know what I mean? Like, it has to go along the line like that. So, Exchange Supplies, M2M, hit and release, decided we're just going to fucking take the abstinence fuckers down. Recovery radicals, couldn't bear them any longer. I couldn't bear them sitting at home. You know, and defending harm reduction, for fuck's sake, I'm not defending harm reduction. There's years of evidence why I was still having to defend and qualify and quantify. You know what I mean? For God's sake. No, I don't know how to do this, sorry. I was going to say, this is not going to be a usual kind of working. So, you know, the bottom needle, every fucking stigmatizing image has got that orange cap needle. Always on the fucking, I don't know why it's on the ground and why it's still half full of heroin. Who's put it on the ground half full of heroin? No, but you know what I mean? It's like, it doesn't make any sense to me. But, so I said, like, why are we doing that? Why are we giving people the needle that is always shown so dirty and grimy and on the floor? Why can't we give them something that, like, doesn't make them feel bad? Andrew again. Okay, then. You know, and the response in them wanting to, they're able to talk about it. So how can you talk about injecting practices if people are so ashamed that they don't want to fucking talk about injecting? But now that it's like, and it was really fucking powerful. And like I say, it was a total fluke. It wasn't planned. That is what it's about. Respect, respond, and reduce. And it's in the moment all of the time. Like, what they need in that moment. 4 o'clock, like a couple of weeks ago, 4 o'clock in the morning, I got a phone call saying, you know, there's a drunk guy here, an older guy, and I'm scared and I don't know what to do, because she can't phone the police. She can't phone the police to help her, because if she phones the police to help her, they'll come out and punish her. So I had to get in the car and fucking go and deal with the drunken guy at 4 o'clock in the morning. And I'm hitting 50. It's like hard now. You know what I mean? This is getting hard. I think HR, from my opinion, lost its soul. It felt like for the last 10 years, it's lost its soul a bit. You know, like, maybe because it's been battered so much. Do you know what I mean? But it's like, it's vibrancy. It's like power. The power is the truth. We hold the truth. What we do works. What we do is needed. Like, that's just the basic truth. So I don't understand why we stopped talking to people who actively use and we moved to this place of talking for them all the time. Because none of the shit that's happened has been me. And I reiterate this all of the time. I take no credit for any of these things. It's all them. And I'm just bridging it to Andrew, who's fantastic and does the things. Will you put it on the next thing, please? So, first time in 30 years, they changed the game in terms of gendered injecting equipment. Because women have got a different vein structure. What the fuck are we doing? It's giving safer injecting advice on how to inject like a man. It makes no fucking sense. And I had never thought about it. That's how dumb I am. And naive I am. Well, I'm not dumb, but naive. I hadn't thought about it. It's like, no, because you don't think about it. And what happened was, I started, when I handed the bags over, like noticing that all had those big, massive, you know, the puppy hands, and then remembering, God, I used to have those because I couldn't wield the pin properly. And when I was trying to go in to find veins, we've got smaller hand spans, so having to pull back that plunger, and then having to push the plunger in, and it's too fast, and it blows the vein. And so Andrew sent some different sized needles, and they chose this little pink one, which is the right size for them. And again, it's flown out. Now, I will say, I don't care what the fuck the needle was made for. I don't care. It was apparently made for what? Botox? I don't give a fuck. Doesn't matter. The orange ones were made for insulin. I just care that it works and that it fits for them. And they chose it. Do you know what I mean? And they don't have puffy hands anymore. And I think it is again another shameful thing that they have to say all of the time, the hands. And so it has made a difference. They do feel different. Can I have the next slide? What are these people? What are they? What are they? Right, okay, so do I give out, it's illegal to give out crack pipes. Do I give out crack pipes? Of course. Do I give a fuck? No. Would I go to jail? Yes. Because I think you've got to sometimes be willing to risk it all. To risk it fucking all. Like, and I don't expect everyone to do that, but there has to be somebody like holding that front line. Like I'm always saying, I'm a dragon. I'm going in there to fucking decimate the place, and I'm hoping that people are coming in behind us to rebuild it. But that's not my role, rebuilding it. I'm not a care bear being nice to people and fucking working proactively with them and shit. So I get 2 panic phone calls in the morning, and it's like both of their boyfriends have been nicked for doing a burglary together, and they don't know how to use heroin, so because they've been getting injected. Panic. So I'm ringing everyone, ringing fucking Andrew, ringing Nigel Brunston. Everyone's giving us different advice. And ultimately, I have to decide, you know, it's me that has to live with it. And I don't feel comfortable. I'm not going to show them how to inject the first time. I'm just not going to fucking do it. I need to go, like when I put my head on the pillow at night, I need to feel okay with me. Just not going to do it. I'm not going to show them how to smoke it on the fucking boil either. And then I remembered Magic Jeanne, who runs the factory at Andrews. Because Andrew only employs people, by the way, users, ex-users, and the family of users. I mean, that's real social justice, isn't it? So she had told us that you could use these pipes for heroin. So I was like, could you, can you, do you? And I said, well, how? And she said, Anna, it's the closest thing to a hit that there can be, because you're burning it all at once, whereas it's like the foil, it's a slow fucking, nobody's going to go from injecting to the fucking foil. Come on, it's not going to happen. That's why we've never been able to do it. So I take it round to them and I get Jeanne and the video and they have never went fucking back. And that was, nearly 2 years ago. And it has now we now have 6 Because what happened is, that's the power of peers, is that they started thinking, well, they've done that, and like, obviously, it's like, it feels good. A lot of the time, mothers don't want to be injecting, especially when it's controlled by a man. And so out of 10, we've now got 6. So I think that's fucking harm reduction to me. I'm chairing that shit. You know what I mean? And so they're not quite crack pipes, okay? Because this is a problem. Calling it a crack pipe and associating it with a mother has a totally different fucking meaning than it does if it was a man. We're going to sell our fucking kids. We're out there every night, you know, selling sex and bringing men back to sleep with our kids. And I mean, it's really, and it's fucking, you know, bastard fucking America. No, because they came over and fucking did that whole campaign to the UK. Never give you for that. So, and this is the one-hit carrier. You're trying to, like, get us off now?
How's this one? Oh, we're still a bit fuzzy. Should we use it anyway? No? Okay. Right. If we don't use it, nobody will be able to see it on the stream. It's fine back there? How about if I hold it farther away? Is that better for the folks up front? It's not the mic system, it's a speaker. Yeah, it was. And suddenly it wasn't. Can the live stream hear us without a microphone? I'm not sure. Well, it wouldn't be a harm reduction conference with, is that better? Or is it off now? It's off now. How about now? It's working online, but not in the room. Fun. Okay. So I think we have to like hold it far away, but shout a little bit. Shout for the people in the room, Lynn, and speak into the mic for the people online.
Well, can anybody hear me? All right, do me a favor. Can you hear me in the back? If you can, wave, okay? Let's.
Sí, hola, hola, hola.
Now?
Uno,
Can you
dos.
hear me? I'll do my best. Bruce, can you hear me? I'm shouting. I'll try. Is this better? Is this better?
Okay.
I don't think it's working.
Sí, 1, 2,
I hear you, but they can't hear me in this room.
El streaming está llegando.
All right, I'll start a little bit. I'll come out here. This part I don't need slides for. I'm Lynn Paltrow. I have spent decades I started out as a lawyer defending the right to choose abortion, and then I got a lot of cases where anti-abortion arguments were being used to hurt women who didn't want to end their pregnancies. So they were cases in which somebody was being criminalized because they experienced a miscarriage or a stillbirth. Or they were criminalized because they had an abortion or it looked like they had an abortion. Or they were criminalized because they gave birth and allegedly did something wrong or potentially harmful while pregnant. But do me a favor, raise your hand if you know somebody who's been pregnant. Look around the room. Okay, raise your hand if you know somebody who's used drugs. Look around the room. What I want is human rights for everyone, for all people, including people who use drugs, including people who have the capacity for pregnancy. And I think we can win and ensure both if we recognize the connections and if we build the solidarity that we need to make the changes that we will continue to need and will have to defend. Did you get it fixed? A little bit, not really. But thank you for trying.
1, sí,
Oh, better? Is it a lower voice? Would that help? Closer? It's still, maybe it's a little less buzzy. All right, here we go. So in 1973, the United States Supreme Court issued the ruling in Roe v. Wade, and they recognized a fundamental right to choose abortion. But it's a mistake to think that the court gave it to us. It came about because the people flexed their muscles and took collective action. 200,000 to over 1 million women each year had abortions before Roe v. Wade. And they weren't doing it as collective action, but it had the effect. And in fact, I think it's a kind of civil disobedience. They didn't do it for a political reason, but if you look at the Gandhian definition of civil disobedience, the risks that they took that affected their lives because it was the right moral judgment fills the definitions of civil disobedience. 17 states before Roe had either decriminalized abortion altogether or had at least made it more accessible. And more importantly, there were a whole lot of things going on that were called back then self-help, but I think we would properly call them harm reduction today. So you had the Jane Abortion Clinic, where women made referrals to people who needed abortions, got them to safe abortion providers, and when they found out that those people weren't doctors, they learned how to do them themselves and did thousands without a single death or major harm. Clergy members announced that they were going in 1969 to tell their parishioners where they could get safe abortions, even though doing that was an act of civil disobedience. That was Reverend Howard Moody and Arlene Carmen. I have to say, I knew about their work for years, but the first time I met Reverend Howard Moody was at the 1999 U.S. Harm Reduction Conference. And we came there, and I came there both because we recognized the connections between the movements. The contraption on the bottom, the Del M menstrual extraction kit. Lorraine Rothman and Carol Downer figured out how to do menstrual extraction safely. It was less intrusive than the methods doctors were using. And you had a kind of rise of empowerment and women holding up speculums, particularly Wonder Woman. Now, unfortunately, in 2022, the United States Supreme Court, and I don't mean the Supreme Court, the MAGA justices on the Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade. okay? At the same time, the United States was going backwards because of the Green Wave movement, because of lawyers in Colombia like Monica Roa, and activists across Latin America. Abortion was liberalized or completely decriminalized and recognized as a fundamental right. Part of what happened in the United States, the decision taking away almost 50 years of the ability to decide to have an abortion, was based on the claim that that right was not deeply rooted in the nation's history and traditions. It wasn't privacy, it was not equality, and it wasn't liberty, words that are in our Constitution. The decision was no surprise in a country that was founded on the principle that some people can own other people and control their lives and bodies. Why anybody was surprised in the United States by the decision in Dobbs was a surprise to me. Now, what's happened since the decision? 13 states or more have flat-out bans. Basically, 22 states, that's almost half the states, have no access to abortion. And what's the impact of that been? So here's the interesting thing. Remember the number I told you about what people did before Roe v. Wade when it was criminalized in every state? 200,000 to almost 1 million? Actually, the rate of abortions in the United States have gone up since the decision in Dobbs, and that was completely predictable. The reasons for that include the fact that people were preparing for it, and because something came into being that didn't exist before Roe. The people who had criminalized abortion before Roe used things like coat hangers and knitting needles and Clorox and had people beat them up or threw themselves down the stairs. The harms from illegal abortions killed women, as they do in every country in the world where abortion is illegal. But in those intervening 50 years, people invented medicinal abortion, 2 drugs in combination that are extremely effective. They are called misoprostol, repeat after me, misoprostol, thank you, and mifepristone. Thank you. They are drugs, okay? Those are drugs. And you can get them online. You can get instructions for how to do it safely. And there is now telemedicine in the United States and around the world where you can call up and talk to a doctor, or you can call up and talk to somebody who will help you take those medications safely. And the experience is the same as having a stillbirth or a miscarriage. And by the way, 15 to 25% of all pregnancies end in miscarriage and stillbirths, not because of anything the pregnant person did, but because that's just biology. So these are medications that are as here safe and effective. They're not only used to end pregnancies, they're used for all sorts of gynecological and obstetric reasons, including dealing with obstetric hemorrhaging, a postpartum hemorrhaging, which is as much blood loss as being shot with a gun. And if you can give somebody misoprostol right away, you can save their lives. So in the immediate aftermath, before Roe went into effect, we were able in the United States to learn from Brazil, to get the drugs approved in the United States. But we were also ready. So these are some of the places you can get these safe medications. There are people in Mexico who immediately started doing accompaniment with people to get abortions. Okay, so here we go. So they are safe. They are protecting women's lives. Let's find a way to stop them. And one way in the United States is to put into effect an 1873 law, a Comstock law, that made it a crime to send obscene materials through the U.S. mails, and obscene materials included abortion. Now, that hasn't happened yet. It's on the agenda of our current MAGA regime running our country. So before that got into place, one of our states, Louisiana, passed a law that reclassified misoprostol and mifepristone as dangerous controlled substances. Now, abortion's already illegal there, But they put them on the list of drugs along with opioids and methamphetamines and so forth. The problem with the response, one of the problems with the public response was they said, well, this is crazy. Louisiana shouldn't do this because these drugs are neither addictive nor dangerous. And that is absolutely true. But it reinforced the myth that the other drugs that are already on the list are uniquely addictive and uniquely dangerous, which is not true. Because if that were true, then of course alcohol and nicotine and a bunch of other drugs would have to be on them. And the real reason most of those were put on those lists were to be used as mechanisms for controlling and oppressing certain groups of people. So you criminalize certain drugs, and then you can go after black people or civil rights protesters or whoever. Now, the thing about Louisiana is they were really not the first. As Professor Flavin mentioned, we did a study, and that's been going on. States have been using a variety of laws for many years in the United States to penalize people that would not be a crime, making things a crime, using existing crimes to punish people in relationship to their pregnancies, sometimes because they had an abortion, most of the time because there's an allegation that they used a criminalized drug. One of my cases not long ago was one in which a woman experienced a miscarriage, stillbirth, and she happened to test positive for methamphetamine. Let me make sure you know this. There is not a single criminalized drug, except Louisiana, because they've added misoprostol and mifepristone, but not heroin, not methamphetamine, not cocaine. None of those drugs are abortifacients. So if somebody loses a pregnancy and tests positive for those drugs, it's completely coincidental. If those drugs, this is how I try to explain it in the US, if those drugs actually cause pregnancy loss, I'd be shipping them to Texas and the other states. So what we also notice, and has been pointed out, is that the states have criminalized, actually Louisiana was not the first state. Georgia has a misdemeanor dangerous drug law, and this woman was arrested for murder after she suffered a pregnancy loss, and they claimed she used those drugs. They dropped the murder charge, but continued with the threat of prosecuting her there. But what are the consequences of this? Better? Oh, God. All I'm hearing is buzz. I'm not even buzz. Okay. So these are drugs that normally they would have on the cart or in the nurse's pocket so that if somebody does begin to have a postpartum hemorrhage, they can save their lives. Well, guess what? Now in Louisiana, before you can give that drug, you have to go to someplace where it's locked up. And you have to get a written prescription. And so maternal mortality, no surprise, is going up in a country where the maternal mortality is already, before all of this happened, extraordinarily high, and doubly and more so for women who are black and brown in our country. Now, the states that have criminalized abortion and have the highest maternal mortality happen to coincide with the states, in many cases, in which slavery had been defended. We have, as a result of our abortion laws, extraordinary maternal mortality, morbidity, and suffering directly from the abortion laws. And infant mortality is going up. It's not just moms. So here are the lessons. Guess what? Prohibition does not work. It doesn't stop drug use. It doesn't stop abortion. It is a tool of oppression, whether it's used in the drug policy context or in the reproductive rights, health, and justice context. Prohibition undermines human rights and public health. Harm reduction, compassion, and respect, as we hear every year, works. Let's save lives together. And if I may take one more minute, you must be wondering what any of us from the US are doing or dealing with right now. So my work has not been very specifically on abortion. It has been trying to do, you can't do everything, trying to do something to preserve the overarching system that I've been knocking on the door of my whole career, that the people who get pregnant should have due process. The people who get pregnant should have equality. We should have access to the constitutional principles that were guaranteed. But they're all coming down. And so I've been working with a group called The Beacon, where we help people learn how to get in the streets, because the one thing that seems to work against authoritarianism is if you can get 3.5% of the population on the streets on a regular basis. And we've now, in New York, during COVID, every night at 7 o'clock, we bang pots to thank the healthcare workers. Now we're saying every Thursday, we're asking people to get onto the streets with a sign that means something to them about what's happening. Go with somebody else, show what you're feeling, and show people how to take this action. Enter so that we can show the public, we can show what resistance looks like, we can build relationships among others, and we can keep joy alive. Thank you.
Now we can take some questions. All right, we have one already.
Hi, Puccio. My name is Philomena Quebec, and I come from the Bad River Band of Lake Superior, Chippewa. We have a statute in Wisconsin. It's called the Crack Baby Statute, and it allows the state to arrest and prosecute and confine any person who's pregnant without any due process, including an attorney. And I've represented a woman and on a case like this, and I have never seen anyone experiencing more trauma from the system. You know, and I come from Bad River, and we have so much trauma in our community. The police shot a 14-year-old kid dead, you know, because he had like a weapon, right? Just assassinated a young child. But what we experience in our community related to this statute is unbelievable. And my client did not want to, she didn't want to move forward with any kind of federal case or anything like that because she's so vulnerable. And that's been why this case is still on the books, because pregnancy it ends at some point. It doesn't last as long as federal case would. And so they say it's moot, right? And there's no way that we can use the courts to fight against this very terrible law. And so we need to take back our legislature from the fascists who are controlling it in Wisconsin. And you know, my tribes, like our tribes, we took back the court from all these things, but this issue is it's invisibilized because the women who are experiencing this are the worst women in the world, right? And we need to change those narratives, because when we do this, there's no safety for them to be able to get prenatal resources at all. And so people in my community, Native women, do not have access to the same sort of prenatal services, and our children are at risk because of this. So, you know, I really like your point related to the need to organize around this, and the need to organize around these statutes that criminalize women.
And
Academy of Perinatal Harm Reduction is making a Wisconsin-specific harm reduction toolkit for pregnancy. You can grab one of the cards I have on the table. Tenemos en inglés y español también. And please get one of those. Go ahead, Lynn.
And I'm going to start crying because I had to come here to meet you. I am so old, I tried to keep that law from getting passed. And I have challenged it 3 times. And the only good news, we did get it declared unconstitutional in the Tammy Lacher case. And I don't want to the law there was called the crack mom law, but the unborn child protection law, it is the precursor for the national personhood movement in this country. And when we won, we finally got it declared unconstitutional in Tammy's case. And then the Attorney General and Governor of Wisconsin appealed. And when they appealed, we got in front of 3 white judges over the age of 80 who asked questions like, but if we don't have this law, how can we control women? And they were going to rule against us anyway, but they ruled on standing grounds, not mootness, but they said the woman who was defending the victory we had left the state and she didn't have standing anymore. But I do have to put one positive spin on this, in addition to meeting you and putting our resources together. The Attorney General who appealed the victory that we had, and the victory was not overturned, it was vacated, so it's law to be used, was Brad Schimmel, who just ran to be on the state Supreme Court. And Elon Musk and the MAGA regime in the United States was so desperate for him to win, to become a majority of the Wisconsin Supreme Court, that Elon Musk actually gave people $1 million to sign, not directly to vote for him, but to vote for him. And not only did he lose, but he lost resoundingly.
Hi, thank you. I'm sorry, I didn't catch your name from South Africa, but I appreciate your presentation. And I was just wondering, you mentioned mandated treatment for the participants of your program and women who use drugs or parenting people who use drugs. And I was just wondering what treatment looks like, or if there are programs that are available. Because I know here in the United States, treatment is mandated for pregnant people or parenting people, but there are no resources available. So it kind of creates a catch-22 for people. So I was just curious as to what that looks like where you are. And thank you for the work you do. Thanks.
The mic is so terrible that some of your words. Or the mandated treatment.
Can you hear me now better, or? Okay. I was saying, I was curious as to whether or not you had mentioned that treatment was mandatory sometimes for pregnant people or pregnant women. And I was asking if there were actually treatments available, that instead of just mandating the treatment, actually having treatment available for pregnant people or parenting people or families. Because I know here in the United States, it's mandated, but the resources aren't available. So it creates a real catch-22. It's kind of like, it's a no-win situation, and people end up getting their children taken anyway. And oftentimes they have a year before their children get taken in the child protective system here. So I was just curious as to what that looks like for where you are, and I thank you for the work you do.
Can you hear me now? Yeah, I was just saying, it's the same all over, to be quite honest. There isn't any, even though people are told to go for mandatory treatment, but there isn't such a thing. And, there are no places where we can say, this is where we can go, that, we can give women this mandatory treatment that they want them to go through. It's just excuses that are made by, duty bearers and policy, and policy people who want us to do things according to their way or the way they think it works for the system. So unfortunately, there is none. And we are, It's us who have now to go on the ground and say, this thing is not working. And sometimes, instead of mandatory treatment, what they do is they just take these children, and children end up, getting lost within the systems. And we're seeing so many social workers changing jobs. And once you get to a point where you even want to go back and look at the social worker and find the social worker who actually did this case, you can't find them. And when you ask where's the file, the court will tell you that we are missing the files. I mean, the system between 2010 and 2011 wasn't working, or we had to reboot the system. So actually, there is nothing out there.
Hi, I'm Sydney. I'm based out of Atlanta, Georgia. Don't hold that against me. But my question is really for anyone up here. And I'm asking because I've heard a lot of different rhetoric since being here about to what extent do men need to be involved in these conversations? Should there be more men in this room right now? Should there be less? Or people who don't identify as women, or people who can become pregnant? Because we tend to talk about people who are pregnant and not the people who, get them pregnant or impregnate them. That's a whole, factor, group of people who are completely left out of the conversation. And so what is your message to men, to that group of people, and to what extent do you think that they should be involved? Yeah?
I've got no fucking message to them because they're not punished like mothers are. So it's like, I'm not going to involve them in the conversation at the same level because they're not equal. We'll talk about parents, but they're not equally punished and they're not equally treated like that. And we need to stop pretending that they are. So yeah, get fathers involved, but recognize that they're not anything like how mothers are treated. Because we're not getting we're not seeing the fathers with the murder charges. You know what I mean? Like it's only the mother. So I just think I can't listen. There's only so much I can do. But yeah, I think men should be in the conversation. Of course they should, but they shouldn't be talking for us. That's the only thing.
Yeah, just to add, I think it differs per country, from country to country. But I think with us, we feel that men should be involved. It's high time we need to have these conversations with them in the room, especially because, women go through, some of these things that women go through are perpetuated by partners. And if we are not involving them in these platforms, then we are not going to have, policies that will speak to both male and females. Because I strongly feel that if a woman is threatened that they're going to take away her children, a male must come in. Where's the father? If we can't find family members who can be able to take care of their children, the father would have to come in and rescue the situation before we lose the kids. So men should be involved. Yeah.
I've got kind of an oddball thing. I think there is a place for men in them. I like to think, I'm thinking of Bob Newman. I'm thinking of Bob Newman who would agree to be an expert witness in our cases. And there's a place for Bob Newman. I'm thinking of the people I've known from other movements, men, women, I don't care about your gender, also taking up solidarity and recognizing that we have to, I really want to defer to people who are doing this work. We need some deep, I'm going to use one of your fucks, deep fucking intersectionality and movement on this. So I think there's plenty of room. I wish there was more women in the abolition movement or more visible in it. And so I think there's a lot of ways for that. It can look like a lot of things.
Tomorrow I'll have a really better answer, but right now, first, we have to celebrate the people who show up. So let's do that first. So thank you. And I can do the list. My organization, without Dan Abrahamson at the Drug Policy Alliance, I don't know what I would have done. And, this is the place where I actually hang out more with men than any other place that I've ever worked. And I think because there's an appreciation for how hard these issues are. But I think we all kind of have a problem. I had somebody who said to me, why did you stop working on abortion and start working for pregnant women? And I was like, what? But our brains are very binary, and I've come to believe more and more that our definition of what counts as human still does not include the people who can get pregnant. We are secondary. Primary health care in the United States of America does not include putting in an IUD or doing the things that people with uteruses have. That's why we had to come up with words like women's health and reproductive health. If we really thought of everyone as human, we wouldn't need those words. So we have to have a lot more, I think we have to have more conversations at a deeper level, not just why aren't you here? And then always in my experience is if they're not here, we have to go to them and keep saying, this is not enough.
And I couldn't have done it without Andrew.
Andrew is indeed a man. Thank you, Anna. Who else? Okay.
How you assumed fast. Hi everyone, my name is Lucas Stevenson. I'm a sex worker activist. I recently joined the International Planned Parenthood Federation as their first community engagement lead, working with different marginalized communities. And I wanted to introduce myself. If you, IPPF, International Planned Parenthood Federation, we have 150 organizations across the world. Some of our members work with marginalized communities, some of them a bit less. So if you are from a country and you want to develop partnership, approach us, and we would love to do that. Unfortunately, some of our partners couldn't come from Sierra Leone or Liberia. But my question was from your work. Well, first of all, congratulations on all the work. And my question was, as a sex worker, I was interested to hear how you see the intersection of criminalization of sex work and drug use for the women you work with. And for example, you were explaining the Corn Law on like obscene material. And that is something that we've seen, that the laws against sex workers have been used to target marginalized women, migrant women, racialized women, women who use drugs. But there is still, even at this conference, I think there is one session that is just specifically on sex workers, where we know that the vast majority of sex workers and women who use drugs are from the same community. So I was wondering if you see a lot of overlap and how we can be better allies in these two movements. Thank you. I was so out of breath, is the altitude.
I think my shortest, pithiest answer would be that I see it also as criminalization often of survival. And I see it as a human rights issue. It's not just about survival. I want everyone to thrive, and I don't want to give up on that. So my short answer is I see it as a question of survival and being able, I don't even have the words, like to be fulfilled in your life, to have joy in the range of human experience, regardless of what. So that's my...
No.
No, I can just say there is a lot of intersectionality between drug use and sex work, remember. In our country, we have sex work movements as much as we have PWUD programs and movements. So those are programs that are fighting the decriminalization of sex work and decriminalization of drug use in communities. And we do work with the sex work sector programs where we do inter-referrals and where we also share podiums where we talk about the work that we do. So it will be very good to collaborate with organizations like yours.
Can I just say, I think sometimes we separate ourselves, don't we? Like intersectionality. Why are we not just all fucking doing it together? Do you know what I mean? Just as women doing it together, or sex, you know what I mean? Like we all have these labels, and it's like maybe that's what weakens us. Maybe that's what, because we're all off, yeah. And just say, let's fucking go and cause some riots. You know what I mean?
Coalition across the board. Let's just stop criminalizing literally everybody, please, and thank you. Next question. Who's got it? Okay.
Hi, my name's Jessica from Minneapolis in the United States. Mostly for Lynn, but anyone. I used to live in Texas, working LGBTQ rights there. It's an absolute fucking horror show. The legislature, including with some Democratic support, is advancing a number of bills that would criminalize any helper who furnishes the means to obtain an abortion out of state. In Texas, the only way to get an abortion safely is to leave the state. Obviously, a domain of mostly privileged people. For the vast range of reasons people need an abortion, abortion funds are obviously enormous. But it also is, I don't live in Texas, but if I had my husband booking me a hotel, me driving my daughter, my preteen daughter, to New Mexico or Colorado or where have you to have an abortion. So I'm just curious, like both within legal means and creative and extra legal means, what abortion funds and other helpers are doing to prepare for this moment. I am a deep pessimist about both Texas and its ability to create a cascade of policy across the country. And so I've got some very brave people who are trying to kill these bills, but they may not be successful. And if they're not, there's next year and the year after. We killed a bathroom bill years ago. It's back again. So just curious what those groups and those helpers are doing. These bills would create, some of them criminal penalties, some of them capital charges, some of them enormous financial bounties for turning someone in, which can be used by abusers and other people. So just curious what helpers are doing, if there's anything left to do.
So I know that many of the groups, the Center for Reproductive Rights, Pregnancy Justice, the Lawyering Project are doing those things, and the ACLU. I am a little skeptical about being, where we would go when a state does something wrong, you go to the federal. And, we're already pretty close to a fascist state where they've recently arrested a judge to intimidate the judges in the United States. So, what we can do though is connect. For example, among the first orders from the current MAGA regime were many to limit trans health care. And I went to a lot of rallies, and there were a lot of amazingly well-organized rallies and speakers talking about how pathetic it is that they're starting their attacks on trans kids, keeping them from getting the health care they need. And this is why we do have to work all together. My only frustration there was, wait a minute, Idaho and Texas and so forth are passing specific laws about travel or helping girls, young kids who get pregnant, and we're not connecting those issues, that these are attacks on young people. And so there are cases, they're going to challenge them. I hope there are enough lawyers to challenge them, but looking at the overarching system, we have to preserve a democracy, so we have some way to stop it. And we have to say, we are already here. They are saying that because of gender, we don't have a right to travel, and we don't have a right to give them health care. And this isn't just anti-abortion or anti-misoprostol. I can't even find the words. It's racist, it's sexist, it's transphobic, and it is part of the authoritarian playbook to make us afraid of one of those groups at any given moment so that we can keep taking away the structures that protect us at least some of the time.
Who else? Any more questions? Yes. Hang on. I'm going to jog.
Thank you. My name is Leo. I'm from Mexico. My English is not good enough, so Google helped me to do this question. I'm a psychotherapist as part of a master's degree in substance use, and I recently had a class on smoking in pregnant women. And it was very dissonant to me that we were constantly emphasized to pregnant women that their only goal of treatment was the abstinence. So I would like to know your thoughts on this. Thank you.
I was going to say, Joelle, do you want to weigh in on this? Because come on, Joelle, and yeah, Joelle is.
So, yes. There's a lot of evidence that smoking after alcohol is the most dangerous exposure, more troubling for pregnancy than meth or heroin or any of these other things. However, we know that it's not that bad, right? We don't criminalize people, we don't take away their babies. We do encourage people to stop smoking. We know that any decrease in smoking helps. You don't have to aim for strict abstinence. We also know that the dangers of smoking are not really tied to nicotine. They are tied to inhaling the products of something that is on fire, smoke, right? So when we're thinking about harm reduction, we think about patches and inhalers, we think about vapes and e-cigarettes. All of these things are harm reduction measures, and we want to make sure that we're encouraging people to do harm reduction. We don't want to aim for perfection and leave behind all of these other options for steps towards better. Better is better, right? Any positive change.
What was I going to say? About which? Oh, okay. Sorry. So in terms of what people can do in Texas, I mean, there's so much good that actually has happened in the United States the last, I mean, not so much, but one of the promising developments is some of the things that defense attorneys are doing. Like, and I might have this concept wrong, but like civil defense and holistic defense. And so it's not just when your client shows up to case, it's everybody's family members or anyone who can show up that day. We're going to be there. We're going to fill the courtroom with people who are going to represent. Because again, it is so freaking hard to be there when you know, strangers over here, the judge, people giving, your own attorney maybe giving you stink eye. So there are things we can do, and one is show up when those proceedings are happening. Now, I think you would also probably say, hey, work with that local attorney, work with the local organizers. You know, is your enthusiasm and presence welcome? Are there other things that you could be doing? But I really think showing up in person or showing up, I mean,
You know what I mean? Show up.
yeah, and even things like I mean, we've had campaigns, and it might be, I'm kind of like you, these are not big, lofty, making the news campaigns. It's like you call people like, look what's happened. Here's the number to the guy at the jail. Can you try to get her methadone? I'm not saying it's the same as revolutionary change, but let's not count out the stuff that we don't need laws to do. This is called being human to one another. This is care. This is called, yeah.
Small change matters. Small change creates big change. We didn't do anything radical in the UK, but we're able to dismantle it because we just fucking kept on going. And more and more people joined. Yeah. But it's just pushing the issue. No, we're not going away. Yes, we're all going public. No, I am going to sit here and say it. Yes, I am going to put this on Twitter, a video that shows you're lying. Sometimes it is just about, because I hate this like sitting around in rooms for hours, planning all these fucking action plans that never get fucking acted upon. You know, 20 years later in the UK, we're still asking, what do women want from services? It's fucking embarrassing. Honestly, what do women want from services? A fucking service. You know what I mean?
We have 2 minutes. We can do one more question if it's super quick. All right, I think if we're done, thank you so much for attending our session. Please come by. I have got a whole bunch of resources on the table. En la mesa hay recursos en inglés y español. Please take some. Gracias. Oh.
Can we take your picture, group picture?
I don't know. I just looked at